So basically, this week, Severance just decided to say,
And now for something completely different.
hello, interwebs, I hope you are all doing well, and welcome to my review of the 4th episode of Severance's 2nd season, this episode titled Woe's Hollow. And also, just so y'all know, my cat Kipo is currently purring in my lap right off screen right now, so if you hear some purring or he starts running around during the middle of this review, you know why. He's kind of distracting me at the moment. But I am not going to let a little kitty cat who's just absolutely adorable stop me from getting my review done. This episode was wild. When it started, I was like, what in the world is happening? And it's a bold move to do something so wildly different on this show at any time in its run, but especially after last week's wild cliffhanger. Like that last week's cliffhanger with Mark doing the reintegration process, to not address that right up front and just have us go off on this other adventure is just a really dramatic choice that I found very interesting. And yet what I do like about it is it caused us to question a few things immediately. It's caused us to ask, is Mark his innie or his outie, or is he the reintegrated one? We do get a kind of sort of allusion to that answer later on when he's having sex with Helly, and he sort of like jumps back and forth between personalities for a brief second. So the implication is probably it's still his innie. And yet, the reintegration process is still, in process, I guess, one would say. Either it failed, or it didn't fully go through, or it takes multiple sessions for it to work, or maybe Mark's outie can choose to become his innie at different points. So there's multiple different ways that this could go. More than likely, my guess is that the reintegration process either failed or is taking more sessions than just the one that we saw. But it does imply that there is something more than what's going on, but that we are more than likely seeing Mark's innie throughout this entire episode, considering he knows all of the other characters and Mark's outie did not. So basically, that I love that question up front. But to get to the meat of actually what's going on here, because I'm kind of burying the lead a little bit on this one, we get a whole episode with our 4 innies outside doing essentially a company retreat. And I love the weirdness of how we start off, the weirdness of the whole damn episode, just to be fair, of the TV on the hillside, them having to meet up and then having to climb. And I love that the video that we get from Milchek basically says oh, you're gonna frolic through the meadows and all of this stuff, when it's actually freezing outside and probably hellish to be out there in this horrid cold. And obviously the weird name of the orbit or whatever the hell it was, which is just again one of those, it's just one of those company retreat style things that they're doing a play on, where you go and hang out with a bunch of people from the company for a weekend, and you're doing stuff with you're getting paid essentially to go on a vacation of sorts, but you have to do all the ridiculous company team building nonsense, and have to listen to all of the company BS about oh, here's our values and and this team building exercise represents our integrity, and this one will represent our team building or whatever. All of that sort of absolute nonsense that you get at those kind of retreats. So that was a really fun play on this, but everything else after this was absolutely just really creepy. The seeing the doubles of themselves throughout the whole thing was really weird, and we get that one close-up shot of a couple of them, and it looks like they're not played by the same actors. So my kind of running theory of what's going on at Lumen, by the way, this is kind of going into that, is that there's something to do with cloning. I know the actors have put that down, but it feels like there has to be something along those lines of doubles, or creating just versions of people that are just the inside innie versions of them, and removing the need for outie versions of them, just creating a disposable workforce sort of thing, something along those lines. So I thought that maybe these were their clones or their doubles or something, but it looks like they're maybe actors or playing them or something, because if you look closely, the doubles are not, I don't think they're the same actor. It's hard to tell for sure, but it does not seem it is Adam Scott or anyone like that. So I think that might be the case. So we'll sort of see. We're still open for a lot of stuff, but it is absolutely creepy seeing all of those doubles. There was one double where I'm I think they could have run up to him if they really had wanted to. They were close enough where I'm I think you could run up to that guy if you're just gonna let him. We cut away from the scene. I'm I think you could have got up to him. Did he just walk away or something like that? It was a weird moment, but otherwise just suitably creepy. And we start to learn this story of Keir Egan's brother that he supposedly killed. Again, again, this idea of doubles that we sort of get throughout the series, but especially is being reinforced in this episode. And I did catch that, like, this big grand story of this background of this, like, sort of very biblical style story of this guy was essentially his brother masturbating and then turning into a horrific, like, melting into the forest. And I thought that was really funny, and I'm glad it was called out by Helly, which is absolutely funny, and made even more interesting by the fact that we now know in this episode, it is confirmed that the Helly that we have been seeing has been her outie the entire time. The one that we've been seeing, dealing with all the stuff going on with Lumen, the, like, more hard-boiled version of Helly. That we basically been just catching. There was some debate whether it was her or not. I was sort of on the side that it was the innie, so I guess I was absolutely wrong on that one. It was sort of seemed like it would be I always thought it was more the innie just because it seemed like the easiest way to subvert expectations. You would expect it to not be her, so I was like, oh, interesting. But it is, in fact, what most people suspected. So I tried to overcomplicate it. But it is interesting that she's the one that starts making fun of this story when she is her outie. So I'm curious what her play was with that. If she's just trying a little bit too hard to ingratiate herself with the group or not, maybe trying to get in with Mark, I should say. So all that's interesting. Even more interesting too is the fact that she sleeps with Mark this episode too. It's like, is that what she wants? Again, there's sort of this question that I've sort of touched upon before of like, oh, maybe her outie kind of wants that connection, or maybe she's just using these people. It's definitely, no matter what it is, it's definitely fucked up. She's obviously lying to Mark. She has power over Mark as well as one of the heads of the company and is one of the ones manipulating him. So this sex act is in many ways a violation of some sort. It's complicated by layers and layers of sci-fi nonsense, but it's some sort of violation. So that is an interesting, and I'm hopeful that they'll deal with that in some way, shape, or form. I'm sure that they will. But it's interesting that Irving's the one to call her out on it and the one sort of pushing against her. I like that Irving kind of notices, like, she was never cruel. She was never cruel, and she would never have called me out. She never would have called me out in a cruel way like that, so you're not her. And his, like, literally drowning her to get Seth to switch her back to Helly. So curious to see where all that's going to play out, but it ultimately leads to Irving getting essentially killed, his innie getting killed, asked to walk in the forest and disappearing. Now, I doubt this is the last time we'll see Irving in some way, shape, or form. At the very least, I'm sure we'll see his outie in some way. But I'd be curious to see if we ever do see his innie again. But I don't think this is the last we're seeing of John Turturro on the show. Just maybe less so of him. But yeah, I'm sure we'll see him at some point. But yeah, very, very dark ending there. But again, Irving just like, screw it. I'm going to go for it. I have nothing else to lose. Might as well say fuck it and expose her as a mole. So did like all of that. I also have to point out, like, the rest of this is just a very, I just like the mood of this episode. There's so many, like, creepy moments and yet funny moments, such as when she's playing the theremin. The kid is playing the theremin at one point for mood music, was also very funny. The dream sequence that Irving has was super creepy and ethereal, and like the woman that he's seen, like all of that was just really creepy and weird, and I loved it. Just like the mood and the filmmaking this entire episode was absolutely fantastic, and adored it. Other than that, I think that's pretty much everything to hit the major points this episode. I mean, a lot happens in this episode. It's a very interesting and unique episode, and yet it's fairly perfunctory, a lot of the things that we could talk about here. So, honestly, one of my shorter reviews for what I think is one of the best episodes of the show, but in a weird way, as strange as this episode is, it's one of the more straightforward ones in terms of where we're getting to and what we're doing. Yeah, it ends up being a shorter review despite my absolute love of it, and I think it's probably one of the series' best so far, if not its best, and I adore it. I'm loving the show. Fantastic season. Excited to see where we're going to go from here, because this one definitely teases up for some interesting, evolutions for the show going forward. So what did you think of it? I'd love to hear all your thoughts down below, and beyond all of that, I hope you all, my friends, live long and prosper. And for one last look, just to prove to you that he is indeed here, there he is. Hi, buddy. Say hi to everyone. Yeah, he's a cutie. Bye.